Good evening, everyone. Let me just sort out my own page, which is always helpful. Let me just sort out. Right, so that tells me I can hear and see. There we are. Here we are. Excellent. Good evening, Jan. Thank you. Thank you for joining us this evening. Always appreciated. I don't understand why that's there, but let's just move that back nearer where I want it. And yeah. Okay, we have a plan. Well, I think we have a plan. No, I know we've got a plan. There's no think about it. I know exactly that I have a plan. There we are. Yeah. So, good evening, Connie. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Right, let me just grab some bits and pieces. Do not want that one. I might just want that one. And let's just wait for some clocks to roll around. Let's just offload these pieces. There we are. I can go over there for the moment. I can go over there. Those can go over there. Where's my permanent brown ink pad? There we are. There's the permanent brown ink pad. And there's an ink doorbell. So now then, let's just fiddle with this a wee little bit and swap the screen over so that you have a better view. There we are, because we really don't need big ugly mug shots. Right, excellent. Goody goody. So hopefully we're nearly, we're just at 6 o'clock. Good evening, is Sheila. Hello, Isabel. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Right, let me put my head into gear, because that's always a helpful place to be, isn't it, ladies? Absolutely, it is a helpful place to be. Right, I have a wooden board from my lovely favourite company, but any wooden board will work. You need something that's going to give you space for your entire rice paper. So about A4 in size, with or without a little bit if you want to add a frame. The choice is yours. Let's just heat that sticker up and then we can get rid of that. Yeah. There we are. And that makes life easy for us. Good evening, Sarah. Thank you for joining us. So I have a different primer paint tonight, just because I can. Well, you might just as well. So I am using the Wall Decor. Let's just shade that a little bit. It's the Wall Decor primer paint in white. They do black, and I just now need to open this, because did I open it before the live? No. Well, there you are. My bad. Let's just do a little bit of shenaniganing. Oh, I've clearly got paint underneath it when I shouldn't have done. Let's just break that seal. I might have to go around this a couple of times. I don't really want to break the lid, so I'd rather break the seal of the... There we are. There it goes. And we'll keep that, because we've got several other pots of paint lurking around that no doubt we will also need to open. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. There we are. Excellent. So this is just a white primer paint. Unlike the gesso, it's quite a thin paint, so it will cover nicely. She says, oh, the gesso is on the floor, and we'll need that later on, I think. But there we are. Oh dear. Right, let's get rid of that offending noise. Right. so that we don't have that going off incessantly, because that will be irritating. So I'm just creating a neutral background for my piece, because I've got quite a pale rice paper today, and so I think it will make a difference to the finished piece. If I was using a dark rice paper, I might skip the priming stage altogether, but when I've got a pale rice paper, it's definitely not a step that you should miss, particularly if you want the colours to be true. I don't think it's going to take very long for stuff to dry today. I'm happy to be proven wrong. I've actually had to shut my conservatory doors this evening because actually it was cooler than I thought, with the breeze. So that's okay. The poor Greek family, I think, are struggling. The Acropolis is apparently shut because it's been so warm in Greece over the last few days, and I suspect that means that it's quite warm in lots of parts of Europe at the moment. So there we are. So I trust everyone else is well. The weather definitely in the UK is more manageable than it was last week when it was just a little bit too hot. There we are. Let's just spread this around and see how much I can manage. I have got my lovely Pentacolor pinny on, and of course with them sitting down and sitting back, it means you can't see it, but I have honestly got that on. And it's actually doing up quite nicely. That's been a battle, because often I have struggled. But there we are. There we are. Let's just get this covered. And then it can dry on its own while we just put some ordinary gesso. And then you'll see the difference in the types of the gesso that I use. There we are. Don't need all of that, but hey ho, we'll not put that back in the pot. We'll not get it back in the pot easily. So there we are. Good. Let's just even out those brush strokes. Not that it's actually going to matter hugely. And then let us lid this pot. Good evening, Isabella. Welcome. Oh, she says, that was clever, wasn't it, ladies? Excuse me, just while I retrieve my brush from off the floor, and whilst we're up, excuse the view of my bottom, if that's what you can see while I bend over, that I'll pick up the other gesso. Yeah, it's scheduled to get a bit warmer here as well. So let's just have a little bit of a clean up of this. It's my bad. I clearly, last time I used it, almost certainly on a live, didn't clean it up very well. And that's why I was struggling to get it open. But there we are. That will work. Hopefully. Let's just squish that into place. There we are. Could take that out, but I do think it helps to get these things sealed properly. So that, as I said before, was the primer paint in white. Good evening, Blanche. Right, so that can go down there. That can go down there. Let's just mop that mess. Pop that up over there to the side. Okay, we might put it up a little bit higher, out of the way. There we are. So it's off view. Let's get that messed up. And then I am reverting to my normal primer paste. So these come from, I think it's just one of the moulds. It's got the gondola and brush, and then lots of words. So we've got museum, theatre, Venetian, Rialto, and art. So not masses of pieces. And I've swapped back to my primer paste, which is what I've got here, because it has some tooth and it will stick to my resin pieces, which have been cast with white rapid resin, but because that's what I had to hand. And that's a great resin because it sets reasonably quickly, particularly in this temperature, and can theoretically be painted without priming, but I always do like to prime. Though it will paint without priming, I just feel that for longevity I'm happier giving it a good coat. So one bridge, and there is a little boat in the set. It's a silicone mould, so one of the more expensive ones, but that just mean that they'll last a bit longer than the plastic moulds. Not an issue if you're not planning on using them, you know, massively. I've never had one of the plastic moulds fail on me, to be fair, and I've used some of them multiple times over multiple years. So there we are. Let's just pop that onto there. So as I say, we're not got masses of pieces. Ooh, she says. See, I can't manage to paint things like this without picking them up with my fingers, and it always therefore means I end up covered in paint. But hey ho! So how is Mexico, Blanche? I know that you're live tomorrow. So for ladies who like to watch their lives in English, Blanche from Mexico speaks both English and Spanish. So she's always worth a watch. It's just sometimes easier to listen in your own language. I can follow the lives in Hungarian, but just sometimes it's just easier, isn't it, to have the live in your own language. So let's just pop that now down onto the floor so it's not cluttering up my desk, and let me give my hands a dry, and then we'll get some of these pieces blasted dry, because we've got some extra bits to do. Right, so let's unravel the wires so that we can have stuff without causing havoc. There we are. So let's just give this a bit of a wipe, take off the worst of that. We won't get it all off. Get rid of that extraneous bit of paper, and then let's just give these a good brush dry. Because my projects are definitely about the layers and the layering, and making maximum use of the superior papers and materials that Pentacolor distribute and collaborate with, but using always the Pentacolor mediums, because they are just so useful for your mixed media pieces. There we are, that's better. You're not alone. You are not alone, Sarah. And that's one of the reasons why Pentacolor introduced a team with some English-speaking creators. Vasilis Compass also speaks in English, so he's also another person that's helpful to watch. So his style is very, very different to mine. So let's put those over there. We'll come back to get those and give them another blast if they're not completely dry. That one might not be. Let's just pick this up because I want to add a rice paper onto here. Oh, I'm fed up with it. So they're all we've got on most of the evening now is tennis, not games, Wimbledon, or football. Is that really? Oh, let me just move that down. Oh, there we are. That will work. Yeah, that's better. Do I work in square inches of space? Of course I do. Because why wouldn't you work in half an inch of space? That's what every crafter does, isn't it? I think that's probably reasonably dry. So I have some decoupage glue and varnish as my next movement. Let's just carry on moving that. This is the matte version. I am going to be adding sparkle, but I don't want shine everywhere on this piece. So I'm just going to pop a layer of this down. Don't know why I've started at the bottom, but hey ho. But I have. And because I've got that primer on, should mean that this doesn't soak in immediately. If you try decoupaging straight onto wood, then what will happen is that the glue just soaks straight in, basically. And then there isn't any glue to help stick it down. So that's never good. And this is a good... There we are. So we will be taking a little bit off there, and then I can fold this back. And I've still got glue here because I don't want a piece in the middle that isn't glued. There we are. Let's just pop this onto here. We have several plans, because why wouldn't I have several plans for doing things and mixing things up? There we are. Let's just give this a nice coverage. There we are. And then I can roll that down. You see, and even though I started on the straight at the bottom, is it straight at the top? Nope. So let's just realign that, and then we can sort it out. There we are. Hopefully that is now, well, that's a bit straighter. Whatever you do, there we are. Because it always depends on the fact that the piece you were working on was flat in the first place, doesn't it? Yeah. I don't think it probably was completely, but hey ho. And I will be filing off that little bit at the top. So now you can see why I've chosen this as the title for my piece, because we've got water on there. There we are. So let's just give this a seal with that. You see, it's definitely off on the wonk there, but hey ho, it's not at the bottom. So the piece of wood is not cut entirely square, but that's manageable. A little bit of edging will solve that problem quite nicely. There we are. Let's just give this a nice coat of varnish. Well, it's the decoupage glue and varnish. Yeah, it just makes life so much easier. There we are. That was a wrinkle I've just squished out. And by giving this a nice good coat, it just helps protect everything. And it means that if I add
paint and stuff over the top that then is in an area that I don't want it in, I can lift it off without damaging my rice paper. So I know that that is a goodly amount, but it's totally worth sealing your rice papers in. And if in doubt, seal, dry, and then reseal. Don't be stingy, because when you're stingy with the amount of your decoupage glue and varnish, that's actually when you're much more likely, when you're working it the way I have up and down repeatedly, to damage your rice paper. So that's why I do it that way. So like that, let's just pop that safely onto the floor, out of the way, and let's just give this a wee bit of a blast dry. Because I've got some layers that I want to add to this that need to dry last. Nice to paint the resin pieces. So I've never been to Venice. I understand it's a beautiful city. This really won't take a huge amount of time. Hi, good evening, Debbie. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Hello, Elizabeth. We're going to add some sparkle to the water, because water in the daytime has a shimmer, doesn't it? It's not a flat. Yeah, it's not a flat colour. Yeah. So that's the plan. Just like this, so that we've got to the point where I can add the next layer. That would be really helpful. Yeah. So the decoupage glue and varnish goes on white, dries completely clear. So we're now getting the colours of our make back beautifully. I'll just turn that round. I'm going to need to be doing a little bit of sanding at the top. I need that top edge to be really, really well dried, because otherwise, if it isn't, when I go to sand it, then I will undoubtedly destroy the surface, which isn't what I'm aiming to do. Let's just get that edge dry. This is just that top edge, so let's just be patient. Not mind niggling. I saw your post, Sarah. I hope you enjoyed it. I have been behaving. I like a good ice cream, but I am not that eating them at the moment. I've got my cheekbones back for the first time in ages. Yay! And we still need to shift. Quite a lot, more bodge. But there we are. That finishes the joys. Right, let us see if that is now dry enough for me to sand that edge. Yeah, sorry about the banging. Aha. Yeah, okay. Because this is a curved surface, it's on the edge of this, it might not be quite so easy to take these pieces off, but we'll do our best. We can always paint over what we don't want if we want to. That's not glued properly at that top, but I know. There we are. and I can feel that this rice paper is still sticky under my fingers, and that's not, there we are, not what I want at this point. So there we are. Let's just, so by sanding, I've then broken the edges where I don't want the rice paper, and then I can break that off, and I will be painting the edge of this, and I haven't quite decided what colour yet, but hey ho. Right. Okay, so we have a little bit of gluing and sticking that I know I need to do before I do the next bits. Okay, so I have pieces of paper. These are from the paper cutouts edge, and they've got white edges, which I do not wish to have. And I could have gone with a blue, a black, but actually I'm thinking I might just go with the brown. So I've just got the Distress Oxide. No, I haven't. I've got Vicky Papino's archival ink. So we're just going to add a little bit more of this. I'm just wanting to build a bit more of a scene than I've got currently, which is why I'm choosing to do this. But you know, it's artistic license, I think, as much as anything else. You wouldn't necessarily need to add these in. Okay. So that can come up just a little bit higher. It's always good, I think, to find your placement, and there is reasons why I'm popping this lot in first, and that's because I'm wanting to add some stenciling. So I've got my express glue, so let's just pop some of that onto here. There we are, and line that up with the bottom of those houses, because why not? That's half of a die cut. Let's take the little clock tower. It's all artistic license, isn't it, really? I'm sure these are based on something that's reality, but there we are. We'll pop that into there and just grab a piece of that. Now, this die cut has C at the bottom, so I'm just going to be careful with my placement of this. There we are. So I'm going to line that up with the edge of my board, but also with the sea or the water. There we are. Right. So that is going to go into there. Oh, she says. And we're going to pop this overlapping. So there we are. But I'm only overlapping it there, up there, because that's not C. There we are. That will work, I think. Ooh, she's just straight houses would help. And there we are. We're going to tuck that onto there. Might tuck it there. Anyway, somewhere around there. Right. Let's just give this a little bit of a blast at the top. The top's okay. Right, so sparkling primer and top coat. Let me have a little look. Have I used this before? That'll be no. But it's textured. So it says it's a primer. So I guess that's what it will do. And it will work as a top coat, so you can paint over things. And it's thick, like a paste. So that my macroning, that also means it's a stencil paste. Hey, well, why not? So I have a stencil. Let me just, I'm rather hoping that that might be in the middle. 19.5. So that is, that's the edge, 20, so 10.5. So that is in the edge, and that means that I can pop that corner in, but I'm not going to use that. I just want that in the center. Let me just center that. 10.5. There we are. Good. So there's lots of pieces on this. So let's just, right. Yeah. You can feel, you can hear that this is gritty. I just need to avoid a little bit of that stencil at that point. So I now want that corner off there. Okay, okay. Let's just pick up a bit more of that. Now, often I would actually put a some stencil spray onto my stencils before I do this, but because this is still damp underneath, I'm not risking it tonight, which might be a bit of a pain. So there we are. We haven't quite got the bottom of that, but that actually works better. So I'm just going to pop that over there because I need to flip this stencil. To get the other corner in. And if I don't clean it, I shall have a mess. Right. And now, let's just take that, pop that on there. I'm going to give that a blast dry because clearly I can't flip it until that is struck. Dropsies tonight. Well, let's just get this dry. It has a texture and a little bit of sparkle, which is cool. Yeah, we just leave this, get this to dry to the point where I can pop the stencil in on the other side to get the corner in. It might not be entirely central, but hey ho, it's what's going to manage. So let's just flip this stencil. And pop that into there. There we are. She says, I'm not careful, I shall have black where I don't want it, won't I? But there we are. Maybe not the best stenciling in the world, but that will work for me for now. Let's just pop that over there and get this off here. Oh, she says. There we are. Why does black get everywhere? Because it always does, doesn't it? Whatever you do. Right, let's get rid of that muckiness. And then I'm going to use this paste to build a frame around the rest. So there we are. So black primer paint might have been better for the sides, but that's okay. I'm just going to add, and then I'm going to wax over this because the texture will then look really nice, I reckon. And I can take the wax onto the surface. Now, if you're paranoid about neat edges, again, take a piece of masking tape when your rice paper is fully dried into place and stick it on so that you've got a line to work with. Because my rice paper, I can feel it's still slightly damp. I don't want to risk that for the moment. So as I say, this is a primer and a top coat. So in its own right, it's got a texture to it. So it's amazing what a difference just actually adding a layer, an extra layer around the edge does, until framing your pieces really does make quite a difference. And clearly I haven't got that centralized, but hey ho, we'll cope with that and we'll do some visual distraction, or I will possibly after the live, but hey ho. There we are. You can definitely hear that this has a grittiness to it. My board where it's been routed is not completely smooth. She says, don't put your hands in that wet stenciling. And then we can come around. Obviously off the live, just paying that extra bit of attention and try and get it even. I think it's probably even on my board because I've got that extra bit there, but maybe not. Yeah, who knows, because we did measure it vaguely. So yeah, I don't think I moved it, but if I have, again, it won't matter. Just take your time if you're making for yourself, and that will work. There we are. So we just have to go around here. Okay, well, that's off that lid. We're going to end up with black bits everywhere. There we are. That's typical, isn't it? There we are. But it works quite nicely, I think, as a texture paste. As I say, it could just as easily be going on top of black primer paste, but yeah, have what you've got. And you did the white for the rice paper, and this is so pigment dense, it's covering everything quite nicely anyway. Let's get rid of that. I can see some lumpy bits up there, so let's get rid of that. There we are. And we'll pop this down to dry whilst we paint some of the moulds. There we are. Do-do-do. It's amazing what difference actually just framing something does do to the whole piece. It helps pull your eye in to the centre, which is also rather nice. Good evening, Natasha. Welcome. It's a while since I've seen you online. I trust that you are well. Using up what's on the lid of my pot. There we are. I'm going to say every intention of waxing over this a little bit anyway. There we are. Let's get the edge of that done, because we all know otherwise I will mess after the live until I'm really happy with it, because that's what I do. Excellent. Right. Okay. So that is the sparkling primer and top coat. I'm not too sure I'd use it as a top coat, but I guess on a wall and then waxing over the top of it, it would probably look quite nice as a texture paste. Right, what have I just done? Aha! That's what I've just done with them. It certainly does. And sometimes you just need to have a piece that's framed. There we are. Let's just move that down. So let me just clean off the edges of that. It's going to help protect that. I can pop the lid back onto there. Make sure it's on properly. Stick that out the way, and then I'm going to clean up that black because it will get everywhere, but I don't want it otherwise, won't it? There we are. So that can now go over there, out of harm's way, balanced precariously, and I'm just going to tackle this mess before I tackle painting some of those moulds, because otherwise I'm going to have bits of black in everything. There we are. It's amazing what use a scraper has. There we are. Excellent. Won't be perfect, but that's fine. If I can get rid of the worst of it, that will definitely make me feel a lot happier in terms of mould painting. There we are. Good. And it won't look so revolting for everyone else. Right. In money, we need 1, 2, 3, possibly. Don't want that. We did doing that. And we want some browns and a blue. So here we are. An assorted collection. All off the floor because we can. There we are. There we are. We are. Now then, let's just turn that and move that, because my camera seems to be moving, which is always joyful of the life. But hey ho. There we are. Let's just shovel that lot over there, out of the way. Clean my hands, and then we've got 1. There we are. Excellent. So I'm sort of taking my colours from the boats I'm going to use, if that makes sense. But I'm going to soften them because I think the white is a little bit stark and it's not really a white, it's almost a grey. So that's what we're going to go with. So this is vintage grey. It's a brown, it's a grey with a brownish undertone. There we are. So we'll just paint these. I'm not intending doing super detailed. There we are. You choose the colours that work for you. Could have gone with white, I guess, or ivory for these, but I quite like it. I'm liking that grey. As I say, it's a grey with a brown undertone, so a warm grey rather than a cool grey. Yeah. Okay. So we've got lots of different shapes here. That might prove a challenge, but actually, I'll tell you what, I'm just going to go over the whole thing in this grey, and then when it's dry, I will dry brush some paler colours over it because I think that's going to work better and will be less frustrating for everyone watching. Because otherwise, you might be here a little while I get a smaller brush and paint one thing as a line with a one-haired brush. Your life is not. That's not great fun on a live. There we are. But we can add our details back in. We might not be adding low lighting tonight. There we are. Because I want this dark as the low light. There we are. So, meeny. We just now need to be patient, ladies, whilst we just get a lot of sort of painted. It won't take a silly amount of time because it doesn't need to take a silly amount of time. There we are. Okay. Not bad, not bad. Okay. So we're just going to add some of that grey onto the top of that boat. Not onto all of it, because this is not exactly the same as the other one. And that looks like the boat is actually facing the opposite direction, which is fine. So let's just add that little keel in that one. There we are. Right. And then we've got some browns and the black. Where's my black? There we are. Just pop that over there. So this, I've got a reddy brown, which is red brown, surprisingly. There we are, red brown and light brown. There we are. There we are. Two different browns, and if I'm unhappy, I can add in some alternative colours. So let us just, she says, keeping that, I think we're going to go with that as a brown for the boat. There we are. a light brown. There we are. This might prove slightly traumatic. There we are. This is going to be the most tricky bit. There we are. There we are. Okay, and let's just go for that reddy brown for that ore, so that the ore looks like it's a different colour. Oh, she says, dropping everything in place. Well, why not? There we are. Let's just add, so we've got a little seat in here with some extra bits and pieces. I have no idea what this is meant to be, so we're going to do this bit in the brown. We're going to pick up some of that for whatever that might be. Don't think it's a person. Who knows? Who knows? She says, missing the back of the ore. So let's just count that red brown and pop the red brown into there. Unfortunately, the nice people who made this mould thought about the likes of those of us that might just have to paint them, and have put the gondolier with his back to us. So that's always helpful, isn't it? So let's just give him some black pants. There we are, black pants. Yeah, that will work. Let's have a black hat. Means I don't have to worry about his face because I've decided he's at the back to me, which is always good. I think there might be. So this is one of my favourite reds. It is a red wine. So let's just give him a red jacket. Why not? There we are. And then let's just add that which I think is the seat in the gondola for the tourists. And the water taxis have to have seats, don't they, for people? I don't think they really want to stand. There we are. That will work. And I think we might just have a little blanket down here as well. So let's just pop that into there. Oh, it's another seat, I think, actually, to be fair. So we've got 2 rows of seats in that one. We've definitely got a seat in there. That's the smaller they are, the harder it gets. Let's just convert that one into. There we are. Yeah. I'm going to give those a little bit of a blast dry in a minute. And because I've got wet hands, I've lifted some of that brown. Doesn't really matter. Right, so let's just pop that lid onto there. Yeah, absolutely, Sarah. Right, so that can go there, that can go there, that can go there. Let's give these all a blast dry. De-sticky the hand again in the process. And then we can, controversially, I think I might put some blue in. Having said I wasn't going to add glow lights, I'm going to add some glow lights because why wouldn't I add some glow lights? That one can be highlighted, and these I'm going to low light, and that will help bring out the words. Oh, I managed to miss one. Let's just do that whilst the going is good, because why not? Because it will irritate me if I don't. There we go. You see, that's what happens when you have everything prepped and you know exactly what you're wanting to do. She says. I can come into here and just neaten up the bits I can see that I've missed in there. There we are. Okay. We are doing okay, ladies. But we've got too many products on the top, so let's clear some of these decks, because otherwise it just ends up too cluttered. So would we like some blue for the inside of those boats, or would we prefer some ivory or even a soft grey? I can do either. Oh, that's where it is. There we are. It's okay. Good evening, Millie. Welcome, my darling. I trust you are well. Ivory. Thank you, Connie. Pick up a suitably small brush, some ivory paint, and let's just paint into here. Just help neaten it up a little bit. There we are. That's better. Help if you picked up some paint, wouldn't it? There we are. Let's just pop this in. I've got quite a small brush here, intentionally. I might just have to pick up some low lights into these, I'm afraid. It's going to offend my sensibilities if I don't. Sorry, Sarah. Connie got there first on my screen. So, there we are. Let's pop that over there, pop that over there, pop that over there. Okie dokie. We're going to be naughty. There's this evening, ladies. Okay. No, we'll go with that one instead, which is blue rather than black. So this is white antiquing gel. It's just going to soften these colours. I can wipe this one back. I find the antiquing gels wipe back just a little bit better than the coloured lasers do. Nothing wrong with the coloured lasers, but I just find that I just think this does wipe back just a little bit easier. There we are. And it's designed to wipe back, so that's always helpful, isn't it? When you've got a product that will wipe back. So let's just take this. Yeah. So that just softens that. Means that that is much more, well, it is more visible to me for you, but there we are. Because the words are now popping out. There we are. There we are. Okay. Let us just take this. This is the dark blue that I used last week. So let's just add this onto here. It's just going to change the colour completely, but it will wipe back. So let me just do that. There we are. There we are. That works quite nicely. And I think this blue looks really scary when it's in its pot because it's really dark. But actually, when it's in place, it softens right down. So let me just pick up just a little bit more than that. There we are. Because it just wouldn't be me if I didn't low light, would it? Really, it just wouldn't. I'm gonna have to take some of that red because I didn't seal these. The red has got damaged, and that is my bad. Totally my bad, ladies. Okay, and it's a good example of what happens when you don't necessarily seal something properly. So let me just take that little bit and correct it. So we now do have these in the blue. Brighten that red up a little bit. There we are. There we are. Good. Let us dry brush our, get those into there and wash into that. And let's pick up my hog's hair brush. Those can go over there. Those can go there. Let's tackle that. And need a piece of tissue paper rather than a wet wipe at this stage. Cool.
There we are. And then let's dry brush that. So I'm just going to pop and get rid of most of that onto here. So this is a coarse haired brush, otherwise known as a hog's hair brush. There we are. And you're definitely better when you're dry brushing to go over multiple times rather than trying to do it all in one go. You need a brush that does feel dry, but it just adds in a huge amount of extra detail into your pieces when you do that. There we are. Cool. Let's just pop that up there, pop that over there. Right, let's get rid of some of this lot which is in the way. That's reasonably dry, just in the temperature of the room. Right. Don't want that one. That's not the paint I want. That is the one I want. So this is a chameleon powder in blue. I just want to add some shine into here. So there we are. Masses of that, but hey ho, we'll mix more than we need. There we are. Pop that over there. Pick up that. We've got a new pot of pigment fix because the other was definitely been around for a long time and hadn't been used for a while. So this is a pigment fixative. There we are. So this will look almost white pearly, but will have a subtlety of silver to it when I have mixed it up. Find a suitable brush for mixing this. There we are. And I don't know about you, but I actually think that this stencil bit here almost looks like the sea. So we're going to mix it up. Where's my delicate blue? We're going to mix these two together. So this is just a shiny pearlized paint with a slightly metallic hue. Hi B, welcome darling. There we are. Let's get rid of that. Let's shuffle that on the floor. Shuffle that on the floor. There we are. Tap around these edges just to break it in a little bit. Get rid of that. And just going to pick up some of that uncontaminated
and just literally following the lines of the water that's already on. So it's just going to give a little bit of a shimmer when it dries, rather than it all being a flat colour. There we are. So it'll be barely noticeable like that, but that's fine. That's the whole purpose. So let's just give that a blast dry. And if I lift that up, so now, yeah, you see if I tilt it, you can see the shine. So the water now doesn't look as flat as it did. Let's put that out of the way. So I have chameleon blue wax, which I can now that's going to be a pain, isn't it? Right, I'm just going to literally kiss the top of this. So it, yeah, it is beginning to show on there. Okay. And for the edges, I'm going to go with graphite. Hello, Antonetta. Is that how we say your name? So this is graphite. Let me just pick up a brush that I've used for wax. Can I see a brush I've used for wax? Can I see it? Right, well, let's just cream cracker another brush then. Okay, so this is graphite. It's just going to soften down, give that a little hint of a metallic feel to the edges. I don't want it all metallicized, but I just want it to be a bit softer than just the black. So I can carry on and post live and come and put more of this on if I choose to, and I might mix it up with some more of that chameleon. But it's just going to soften the black down, and then I can add take some of that into here. There we are. I will have cream crackered this brush in the process. So ladies, if you don't want to cream cracker your brushes, then don't do what I'm doing, or keep one. I do have one that I use for wax, but can I see it on my desk? No, I can't. There we are. So we've got a little bit of extra sparkle added into that. So that is now too big for there, which is fine. So let us grab the sorted bits. So this is a die cut chipboard piece from the collection, but I don't want it quite that thick. So if you take your life in your hands, no, don't really, but these pieces, the die cut, this is a die cut chipboard. It's not the ephemera. If you don't want them as thick, you can split them. That wasn't very helpful. There we are. And there's a natural cleavage line, so they split quite nicely for you. There we are. Spread that glue around. This is now, yeah, essentially it's going to be cardboard to cardboard. So there we are. So I'm going to pop that piece onto the edge of there. And then we'll give it a little push and just let that grab. There we are. That's grabbed. So, as ever, we need some heavy bodied gel. There we are. So let's just pop some of that onto there. I'm going to pop that over there so it looks like you can get off the boat and go up those steps. Well, that's the feeling. Okie dokie. That I'm going to abandon because I think it's now too big. I did think about, no, maybe not. Maybe not, maybe not. Maybe not. I could just cut a piece out from the from the chip, yeah, from the paper pad, and it would be smaller. Or get a sticker with a sticker. I think I used the stickers the other day. So while those are grabbing, let's just find the layer. There we are. Okay. And I'm just going to, when I can see my, I'm doing just fine. So we're going to echo the boats. Let's just spread that out so we don't have amount 10 tons of it. There we are. And we can pop that there. Let's get those words so they're up the right way and in the middle. So that glue grabs really very quickly. Right. But we have some more pieces of paper. So let's just add some extra bits of paper. So because I didn't want just one boat. There we are. Inking those edges. We're going to pop that there. Thank you for tagging lots of people for me, my darling. It's much appreciated. I trust that you are well. There we are. So we're going to pop that into there. There we are. Let's tidy the mess. I just need that to grab. Let's just tidy that. the chipboard is lifting slightly on the bottom. So let me just give that a few seconds to grab. There we are. Let's just pop that into there. So we've got the boats all lining up and hustling and bustling together. And I have some extra bits. Now, why have I got that out? Anyway, right. Let's just add. Because these are, there we are. Theatre. Put that in a little bit. There we are. Let's just give that a little bit of a squash so it sits down properly. And then I need to work out why I put the other bits out, but I did. There we are. That can go there. I think we might not put. We think we might just call it. So we're going to pop that. We're going to ink the edges and we're going to get rid of that window because I don't like the window. There we are. And that will cover that. And we're going to pop that inked edges. I think it's been announced, that's for certain, Sarah. There we are. And this will hopefully help distract from the fact that we're not quite in the middle. There we are. Excellent. So, let's pop that in there. Pop those over there. You see we've got 55,000 tonnes of gubbins every which way. That definitely needs to glue down. Onto there. Okay. And do I want some splatters tonight, ladies? Oh, I think we will have some splatters because it wouldn't be me without some splatters, would it? There we are. So that's just some white, watered down white paint. Doesn't have to be a mountain. There we are. Yeah, of course it has to be. Has to be. There we are, ladies. So we have our dream city, our gondolas, our bridge over the water, allowing you entrance to a stately building. And we've used some products that you don't very often see me using, some of the chameleon powders. We've used some of the new wall decor products, and we've used the sparkling primer and top coat. So there is our finished piece for the night. Please, ladies, take care. I haven't got a clue what I'm doing next week. I haven't got a clue. But I will come up with something between now and next Tuesday. Oh, well, actually, I'll come up with something between now and Thursday. Because I need to submit the details in by Thursday.
So let me find this. So thank you very much, ladies, for watching me this evening, and I hope that you've learned something. If you're in the UK and near Doncaster at the weekend at Crafting Live, I have the pleasure of guest demonstrating on Saturday 11:30, so please do come and find me. In the meantime, stay safe, look after each other, and look after yourself. Bye.